Ikemoto has just revealed the Shinju's biggest weakness, and how Boruto will ultimately defeat the Shinju, or how the Shinju will ultimately defeat themselves. As in this recent chapter, we get a good understanding of Jura as a villain, a character, and even simply just as a concept. And in the last video, I discussed Jura's take when it comes to instincts and how one should live, but in this video, I want to focus on Jura's take on love and his dialogue concerning it, which in my opinion reveals the Shinju's biggest weakness, or simply Jura's biggest weakness when it comes to discuss how exactly he will be defeated. And for this to make the most sense, I want to pick out a philosopher who Jura's views seems to match the most with when it comes to love, and that philosopher is Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher best known for his rather pessimistic outlook on life. Schopenhauer viewed love not as a noble, transcending force, but as a manifestation of will. Will is described as a blind, irrational force that drives all life. In his eyes, love is essentially an illusion, a trick played by our inner drive to ensure reproduction, often leading us down a path of inevitable suffering. Jura's perspective, based on his dialogue in this chapter, clearly resonates with Schopenhauer's views in one key way. When Jura claims that love causes our thoughts to malfunction, he essentially echoes Schopenhauer's idea that love distorts our rational thinking, leading us into decisions that ultimately result in pain and loss. Schopenhauer argues that our attachments, including love, only serve to amplify our suffering as they bind us to desires that are ultimately unfulfilling. And this is clearly shown in Jura's dialogue when it comes to Inoshika-cho and the dilemma he faced. Jura was first exposed to this binding concept called love, which he warns the Shinju about, saying that they must overcome love, when he says that his instincts are telling him to conquer/overcome it, depending on the translations that you read. But Jura comes to this realization and comes to this perspective by seeing what Team 7 alongside Himawari end up doing, as they essentially risk the survival for their entire team due to the love that they have for Himawari. As in that instance, the gap in power between Jura, Team 7, and Himawari was so great that no matter the strategy, it would ultimately result in them losing their lives. However, due to the love that they had for Himawari, although even knowing that their actions were irrational, they continued to protect her, which ultimately resulted in Inogen dying. From Jura's perspective, due to the gap in power that was simply showcased in that fight, it meant to Jura that they knew that they would ultimately die if they continued to face him. So they essentially risked 3 people dying and Himawari getting devoured, instead of simply Himawari getting devoured and 3 people surviving. In Jura's mind and his way of rationalizing, the easy decision would be to prioritize the survival of 3 over the survival of 1. But clearly, due to the love that he blames as the reason why they were malfunctioning, and those thoughts weren't in line with any sort of rationale, due to Shikadai, as he calls, being a smart guy, he doesn't understand that. Even in the fight, he noted multiple times that he doesn't understand the reason in which they acted this way. And then he deduces that it is love. Love is the reason why they were able to do so, and through to the various books that he has read. We also know that a couple chapters ago, Jura did come to the leaf to collect a couple books, and most likely those books had to deal with love. And maybe he did end up reading Schopenhauer's book or something of the sort, which ended up explaining to Jura this one concept of how love can lead to such irrational thoughts and decision making, causing him to conclude that love is ultimately something that is negative for any sort of logical being. This is what Jura ends up concluding. However, just off this, we can clearly see how much of an impact love will have. And this is not the childish love, this is not romantic necessarily, there are multiple different facets of love. And it is clear to me at this point, if you don't see the pattern of love between all the Shinjus, and even with this new chapter, when love is being discussed, it is quite clear now that there is a pattern of love that Ikemoto is trying to draw us to, and these different facets of love that the Shinju end up representing, with Matsuri and Konohamaru, we clearly see the side of romantic love. It is being pushed down our throat with the jealousy that Matsuri has when another girl is able to call Konohamaru in such an endearing way while she cannot. We have with Sasuke and Hidari a side of parental love, parent to daughter. We see with Ryu and Gaara a side of child to parent love, still dealing with this family type love dynamic. We also see with Ida and Mamushi a lustful side of love, infatuation between a character to another. With Jura and Naruto / Himawari, one could deduce their love to be one of love through similarities, love through finding out the closest person that you are like to. When it comes to all of the Shinjus, it could be argued, maybe aside from Jura if you don't think that Jura operates in the same way, as his love is a little bit more different and harder to explain, but you can argue for the rest at least that their love are showcasing these different facets of love. And with the recent emphasis that love has had in the story, we are clearly seeing through Ikemoto's work how love is going to play a big factor when it comes to the Shinju, and this is Jura's current perspective. However, just as he notes himself, love is quite complicated, and it isn't as one-dimensional as Jura is explaining it, as there obviously is a irrational side to love, love that causes you to go crazy, see red flags, and you don't believe it, simply due to the fact that you love someone. This is clearly the case. However, there is another side of love. Love as a catalyst for great strength. Love that makes people even stronger. And this is what we have clearly been shown through almost every character in Boruto. There obviously is love that pushes one towards destruction of oneself or of one's people. But there is also love that pushes through growth of oneself and his people. We have seen this with Sarada. Sarada's love for Boruto caused her to develop the Mangekyo Sharingan, which ultimately saved Boruto's life due to the fact that Sasuke ended up seeing that, which ultimately caused him to go and save Boruto, a Boruto who at the time was not sure what to do with his friends who were trying to attack him. Kawaki's love for Naruto, this was the catalyst that Amato manipulated to allow Kawaki to end up reawakening his karma, saving Naruto and defeating the likes of Borushiki and Code. Himawari in the same discussion that Jura ends up pointing out, and Jura only sees as negative, we can clearly see the positive. It was due to the love that Himawari had for her friends that allowed her to awaken this power, as before she wasn't able to use Kuruma's power, she wasn't able to draw into that, but love, the love that she had for her friends and seeing them in danger was the catalyst that pushed her towards growth. So it is true that Jura can say that love can push one towards destruction, but he can't forget the fact that love can push one towards growth itself. And this is the dynamic between Ninja and Shinju when it comes to love. We're going to see the Shinju try to bypass love, seeing it as only negative, seeing it as an obstacle, something that they have to conquer, while we have Ninja who use this love to go against the Shinju and ultimately defeat them. This is the dynamic that is currently being shown, and this dangerous feeling that Jura describes to as love is what could ultimately break up the Shinju, as they simply don't understand love. And we clearly have a character right now who is experiencing that love in the form that, as Jura describes, could ultimately destroy her. But the Shinju aren't the only group that don't understand love. There is another group who, just like the Shinju, have been stated not to comprehend the concept of love, and those are the Otsutsukis, as Kaguya describes herself, saying, "You both don't know how dreadful they can be. Love doesn't work on them, they only understand power." The Otsutsukis are described in such a way that clearly showcase that they do not understand love, they do not understand that concept, the concept doesn't work on them, and they only understand power. It could be stated that Kaguya is the only outlier due to the fact that she did have love for humans, which ultimately caused her to betray Ishiki. We could see something like this happen with the Shinju, with one of the Shinju being an outlier and their love causes them to betray the clan itself, just like Kaguya did betray her clan by going against Ishiki. But some might also say that this is not canon because it happened in the anime and was not really shown in the manga. So regardless of the interpretation you go with, it can even be said that due to the fact that those characters ended up being shown in the anime and manga, it could be said that what Kage is saying here is canon. But regardless of the interpretation you go with, it does end up matching up with the lore. And if we check this interpretation, you would also have to look back at Momoshiki and why his plan did not work. It was simply due to the fact that Momoshiki could not understand love and did not understand the fact that the love that Sarada had for Boruto would cause her to awaken the Mangeki Sharingan, and the relationship of love between Boruto and Sasuke would ultimately strengthen Boruto's resolve, causing him not to despair and give him control. It was that love that Sasuke had for his daughter that pushed him to save Boruto, and that love ended up giving Boruto hope, a hope of a better future, and the reason why he did not end up despairing. And this likely is the reason why Momoshiki's plan did not work, because he, as an Otsutsuki, doesn't understand love and couldn't factor it in to his own plan. So although he saw the perfect moment in which she could cause Boruto to feel despair or to feel some sort of emotion where she could capitalize on, he didn't understand the other emotions that human beings possess, and one of love, not as destruction, but in this case as a catalyst for strength and growth in one person. And this may be the same for Jura, who doesn't understand love as he is influenced by the same genetics as the Otsutsukis. His Otsutsuki DNA coming from the fact that Code gave him some of Ishiki's, due to the karma that he ended up mixing into the Ten Tails. This is why, instead of embracing love, his instincts are telling him to conquer it. And it could also be an explanation as to why the Otsutsukis do not understand love, because their instincts are telling them that instead of embracing love, they have to comprehend it. And this may be a similarity, maybe some foreshadowing to the Otsutsuki clan that we do end up seeing by some of the patterns that Jura are showing, because the instincts that Jura has is influenced not only by the Ten Tails, but by Otsutsuki's due to the evolution that Code ended up causing. And I don't understand why I didn't see this before, but especially with this newest chapter, we see this clearly being the case, due to the fact that the only instincts that should come from the Ten Tails / Divine Tree is that instinct of creating a chakra fruit. Everything else is not instincts coming from the Divine Tree or the Ten Tails. It is instincts coming from the Otsutsuki DNA that has been acquired. It is the only other reasoning. It could be the very reason why Jura has the same instincts to go and devour Naruto that deviates from the fact that he is the Divine Tree / the Ten Tails. Another group of instincts, which I believe to be Otsutsuki, is what is playing a role here, and the fact of Jura saying that his instincts are telling him to overcome love, a concept that clearly matches with the fact that Otsutsukis do not understand love, do not embrace love. It is his Otsutsuki instincts that are playing this role that Jura is listening to. And if we examine this from a Freudian perspective, you would see that this truly is the easiest way to explain it. So I want to quickly go down the ID, ego, and superego, and exactly how it plays a role into the character that we have here as Jura, as this would describe his character quite perfectly, and what Jura is truly saying by following one's instincts. So we have the ID. Think of the ID as instincts, our basic drives, these raw impulses that help us live and reproduce. The ID operates entirely on instinct and isn't bothered by logical thought or consequence. This is what Jura wants to follow, as the Ten Tails instincts tell him to devour an Otsutsuki, become a Divine Tree, and create a chakra fruit. When they turned into Divine Trees and evolved, they developed new instincts and also became self-aware. These new instincts is what Jura is referring to when he says that there are things inside of him telling him to devour Naruto and telling him to conquer love, just like I have explained. A lot of people confuse it to be simply Jura's curiosity. There is another part where Jura discusses his own curiosity, but when he tells the Shinju to bend their ear to their inner voice, their inner instincts, and then they will find their target. And this is why their target have a pattern of love due to their instincts. But they have also developed a new part of their psyche called their ego. And this is why in my videos you will always hear me discuss the fact of said translation and this translation and based off the translation you heard, because Viz Media doesn't always have the best translations. Because if you pay attention to the OG translations that came out when it was first released, you would see that Jura says that they have developed ego instead of self-awareness, and I believe in this instance it would be the perfect word to use, as ego is the rational part of the mind that mediates between the raw impulses of the ID and the demands of the outside world. The ego is what helps us think about consequences, plan ahead, and make decisions. This is why we hear Jura say that he is able to resist devouring Boruto in chapter 4, unlike the 10 tails that were shown to just start eating any Otsutsuki that pops up around him. The 10 tails doesn't factor in the consequences due to the simple fact that it is going off instincts. The ego tames the ID. This is where the Shinju are now developing in a similar manner to humans. But the part where they do not want to meet humans at is the superego, which Freud explains the superego as the part of the mind that develops as we grow, absorbing the values, rules, and morals of our society. And this is the part that Jura doesn't want to go to. And it is important to note the fact that it happens as we grow up. And due to the fact that the Shinjus are growing as they live these experiences, it would mean that it is a genuine possibility, as Jura quotes, and that they end up going down that path, which is why Jura makes a clear effort to not do so. The superego is like an internal set of instructions that tell us what's right and what's wrong. Jura calls it systems of reasoning in the latest chapter. Jura rejects the superego, believing that it is flawed, as it forces the ego to mediate between the superego and the ID. This is essentially what is happening every day to us human beings. We have our natural instincts, but we also know right from wrong. And our ego, the rational part of our mind, is telling us when we can bend the ear to our ID when it comes to, oh, I am hungry, so I can go eat food. But when I am hungry turns to hurting another human being, and you know that it is the wrong decision to do so. So in that instance, you end up resisting your hunger, and then when you can do so in a manner that doesn't go against your superego, your ego allows you to go eat your food and then listen to your ID. This is essentially the battle that is going on, but Jura doesn't want to partake in this battle at all, so he disregards the superego, as this battle stops evolution, because it would take time for an individual. Going back to the hunger quote, you had to resist hunger in that moment and find a way to eat that matches with your superego, which meant in that instance you did not eat. However, if you followed Jura, if you simply followed your ID while still having your ego, you would be able to eat a lot earlier and wouldn't have to go through this mental battle. This is essentially why Jura disregards the superego, as he believes that this battle halts evolution. But this is simply Jura's side of viewing things, and there is definitely the negative when it comes to this internal battle, but it is through the superego that one ends up finding a feeling of belonging in a community, which causes them to adapt certain values. And when those values are disrupted or are forged, it can cause a person to awaken a great deal of power and become a whole lot stronger. And this is what we end up seeing with Himawari, as when those values, which come from the sense of belonging that she has through the love that she has to all the partners, love throughout the community, gives everybody a sense of belonging. These are my people, I love these people. And when you end up disrupting that love, for a person to reforge it, to make sure that the love is not broken between a member of that said community, that person can awaken a great deal of strength, which Himawari ends up showcasing. But due to the fact that Jura simply doesn't understand love, he is not able to understand that very own fact. And if Jura continues to attempt to disrupt these bonds that they have created, and which the ninja end up representing, he will ultimately lead to his own demise. And this is why love could end up being the biggest weakness to Jura, as Jura doesn't understand love in its full entirety, and thus he doesn't understand that by trying to disrupt this feeling that they have, he is ultimately going to make the ninjas a whole lot stronger. And this is why you have to watch this video right here, as I discuss who will be the next one to awaken to this love that they have for each other.